Madhavananda Das, and this is morning time here in Sridham Mayapur, and this is our daily uh, adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. So today we're going to continue with our topics about Suddha Bhakti, pure devotion, and the characteristics thereof from the 29th chapter, the third canto. This is text 11 to 12. This is the 15th session we've given on these two verses, and I think we'll have at least one more session. We want to make a note to the devotees who normally attend these. We're considering to change the time and put it up 10 minutes earlier. So it means we would be starting about 8 o'clock Indian time. So we'll mention that again at the end also. Narayanam namaskrityam naram shaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet Vedi Ramayanishchaiva Purane Bharate Tata Adavante Chamadje Chahari Sarvaturgiyate. Explain it. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum. Right hand. Get him. Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Sri Gurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam. Last one. Paramananda He Madhava Padunga Luchi Makaranda Se Makaranda Panakori Anande Bolo Hari Hari Harinka Name Vandavela Parikori Be Chakadola Se Chakadolanka Padaye Manamo Rahu Nirantare Manamo Nirantare Rahu Ha Krishna Bole Jiva Jao Ha Krishna Bole Jao Jiva Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 29, description of pure devotional service by Lord Kapila to his mother, Devahuti, text 11 to 12. Madguna Shuti Matrena, Mayi Sarva Guhasaye, Manogatira Vichina, Yata Gangam Basom Buddho, Lakshanam Bhakti Yogasyan, Gunasya Hudaritam, Ohoityadavayataya, Bhakti Purushottame. Translation: the manifestation of unadulterated devotional service is exhibited when one's mind is at once attracted to hearing the transcendental name and qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is residing in everyone's heart. Just as the water of the Ganga flows naturally down towards the ocean, such devotional ecstasy, uninterrupted by any material condition, flows toward the Supreme Lord. I want to read a second translation of the same verse. The definition of transcendental bhakti yoga is thus illustrated. So again, this is speaking about nirguna bhakti, or bhakti free from the modes of material nature. In our previous sessions, we had long discussions about what is saguna bhakti, bhakti in the mode of ignorance, passion, and even goodness. So here, the translation, the definition of transcendental bhakti yoga is thus illustrated. It is the unbroken tendency of the mind to be drawn to me, whose abode is the heart of hearts of everyone. Simply by hearing about my qualities, just like the water of the Ganga is drawn to the ocean. Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport, we're just reading a few sentences of it. The basic principle of this unadulterated pure devotion love of service is love of Godhead. Madguna Shruti Matrina means, quote, just after hearing about the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in our previous sessions, we spoke about many, many things and how the necessity is there to have shraddha and different types of shraddha. What is paramarthik shraddha? What is transcendental shraddha? What is lokik shraddha? What is mundane shraddha, faith? And we spoke about how that shraddha comes by service to Guru, but how that shraddha is not enough. We also have to have ruchi. And that ruchi also comes from service to Guru. And we spoke about how the gopis of Vrindavan, and in particular Srimati Radharani, are the emblem or the standard of this particular verse which is being described. But then 2 sessions ago, this is our 3rd session on the same topic, we raised a relevant question. We spoke about how whenever we speak on Srimad Bhagavatam or any Vedic literature, it's not proper to speak in a theoretical way. Rather, we have to speak in a way that's relevant for the persons we're speaking to. So we can speak all about the gopis and Radharani, and that's like, yeah, okay, that's entertaining, that's interesting, but ain't got much to do with me. So in this verse, Lord Kapila says, Madguna Shuti Matrena, Mayi Sarva Guhasaye. Now, Sarva Guhasaya means the heart of hearts. It means literally, Sarva means all, and Guha means cave or heart, and Asaya means the shelter. Krishna is literally the heart of everyone, the heart of everyone's heart. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he says that who is the Paramatma of the Paramatma? That's the Vaishnavas. So the Vaishnavas are in the hearts of Krishna, Krishna's in the hearts of the Vaishnavas, Krishna's in the hearts of everyone. But Krishna is the heart of the hearts of everyone, not just the pure devotees. And so indirectly, Lord Kapila here is giving us some kind of hope. And we'd like to continue with the discussion that we had in our last few sessions about ashabandha, or firm hope, which is also known as mahati asa, or very strong hope. And we spoke about this viṣāda-yoga, the yoga of lamentation, vish meaning poison, ada meaning to accept the poison of my fallen position, and how Sanjaya, in the beginning of the 2nd chapter of the Gita, he says, Vishidantam idam vakyam uvacham madhusudana, that is this viṣāda, this lamentation that Arjuna exhibited, which evoked the Bhagavad Gita. So this is the best way. Jiva Goswami in Bhakti Sundarbha, he says that there's 2 types of bhakti. There's sakaitava, or cheating bhakti, and there's akaitava, or pure bhakti. And what is the difference? The difference is in our honesty. And therefore, our Guru Maharaj used to say, we've been repeating the last few sessions, and we'll repeat it much more today, your only qualification is your disqualification. It's a very profound statement. And we quoted from Sanatana Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Rupa Goswami quotes his brother, Na prema shavanadi bhakti rapi vayogo tava vaishnavo gyanam vasubhakarma vaki yadaho sajjata rapyaskirva. How I have no prema, I have no qualities of hearing and chanting, I have no bhakti, I'm not a yogi, I can't control my senses, I'm not a Vaishnava, I don't have any knowledge, I wasn't born in a good family, but still, hey gopi jana vallabha vyattayate ha ha madhusaivanam. I have this great hope, this ashabandha, that Krishna is kind to the fallen souls. So how does Krishna manifest that kindness? In our last session, we began to look in the direction of the 6 Goswamis and some of their literatures, something which unfortunately many devotees don't take the time to look into, but literatures which are very, very important. And we spoke about 2 verses composed by Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. One was in the 1st verse of Braj Vilas Stava, and the second is the 5th verse of his Manasiksha. And how these 2 verses, although they're in different meters and slightly different words are used, they're practically identical verses. In Braj Vilas Stava, he says, Patisa Rajabir Badham Kama Diravatmapatibi Chitvata Samarantastan agare pantamam bata. That I'm on this road of bhakti, but I've been bound up with the ropes of lust, anger, greed, and other things. So I'm calling out chitvatu sangarantas. Chitta means to cut. I'm calling out to those devotees of Krishna, who's the killer of aga, to come and protect me. The Manasiksha verse in text 5 says the exact same thing. Asach chesta kashta pradavikata pasa libiriha prakamam kamadi prakata patapati datikarai gale badvahanye hamiti baka bidvart napagane kudu tvam futkaran avati sayata tvam manaitam. Same point is being made, that I'm on this road to bhakti, and these robbers, these thieves have attacked me with the ropes of all these sinful activities, and I'm calling out to Krishna. But here he says the killer of bhaka. And why is it that we spoke something about the one difference in these two verses? In Braj-Vilastava, he's calling out to the killer of Krishna, who's the killer of aga. And in Manasiksha, he's calling out to Krishna, who's the killer of bhaka. The two verses are almost identical, but this one distinction is there. We don't have any comments on this, but we suggested that they have something in common. Bakasura and Agasura, they're brothers. And their sister is Putana. And we spoke something about that and gave some purport to that in our last session. You can listen to that recording if you want. And so we spoke also in our last session, we quoted a lot of things from one mundane poem about how the whole purpose of life is just cleaning dirt, and then you finally buried in dirt. And we gave some examples from the Bible, even something we very rarely do, and from the life of certain saints, such as Saint Gemma of Italy, and how she was criticized by her superior that, Gemma, why would Jesus want to have anything to do with the cesspit? For those of you who don't know that word, again, cesspit means cesspool means a place where they gather the stool and urine. Usually they're underneath what we call an American outhouse, or old-fashioned stool place. And they dig a pit underneath that, and that's a cesspit. And they said, this is Gemma. And when she heard that, a big smile came on her face. Yes, this is how I want to think of myself. This is how I want to approach the Lord. Because our only qualification is our disqualification. So in this session today, we'd like to go a little further with some prayers to Srimati Radharani, and how sometimes there's a kind of tension when we have the highest desire, but we're the most fallen person. But as an introduction, we'd like to turn to the Mahabharata. This is from the Karna Parva, the 41st chapter of the Mahabharata. And there's a story which is told on the Battle of Kurukshetra. This is Salya, who is on the side of the Pandavas. That's how we call it. Salya is their uncle. And he's speaking to Karna. Salya became the chariot driver of Karna. It's a long story. But before Karna began to fight, Salya wanted to discourage Karna and make him lose his inspiration. And so he told a very wonderful story that some of you may have heard us speak about before. We printed in one of our Krishna Katami, the Bindu magazines. The story is called Flight of the Crow. And how the Mahabharata says that there was once a wealthy Vaishya who was living on the bank of the ocean, and he was a very charitable person, very good in his behavior. And he had a number of sons who were very kind to all living creatures. And there was one crow who used to come to their house every day. And the children, those boys, would give him the remnants of the family's food. And they would give him all kinds of opulent pudding and yogurt and butter and different things. And after eating that for some time every day, that crow became a little fat. And along with that fat came some attitude. And he thought, I'm the best of the crows. There's no crow that's as fat as I am. There's no crow that's equal to me. I'm the best of all the birds. And one day, there came some Rajahamsa swans, huge swans whose wingspan is practically bigger than the length of my arms. And the Mahabharata describes that they were practically equal to Garuda in terms of speed and ability to fly a distance. They came to that area, and all the birds who saw them, they said, wow, look at that. These birds are very, very impressive. When the crow heard the words of those other birds, he couldn't tolerate it. That's the nature of a proud person. And he challenged those Rajahamsa swans. He said, everybody says you're so big. I challenge you to a competition, a flight. And then we'll see really who's the best of the birds. And the swans just looked at each other. This guy's crazy. He's just a little crow, can't hardly even fly, can't fly very high, can't fly very far, has very small wings. So they ignored him. And then the crow started challenging him in a louder way. You come here, you're trying to run away from me, you're afraid of me, I accept my challenge. And then the crow, he said, just see how I can fly in so many different ways. And he flew up in the air, and then he started flying straight down, and then he flew upside down, and he flew sideways. And all of his brothers were making a big, big noise. Caw, caw, caw. Just see our brother the crow. What a great personality that he is. And the Rajahamsa swans just looked at each other. They said, let's get out of here. All these people are crazy. They didn't even want to take part in such a ridiculous competition. And so then they began to fly strongly out over the ocean. And the crow, so proud, began to chase after them. You can't get away from me. I know you're afraid of me. You wait. And he started flying as best as he could. And he was following the swans out over the ocean. But after some time, the crow couldn't see the bank of the shore anymore. And he'd never flown that far out over the ocean. And he started becoming afraid. And he started losing his strength. He started becoming weak. And he started flying lower and lower until the crow started hitting the water. And then he became greatly afraid because he knew that in the water there's huge fish like sharks and other creatures which will eat him. And so finally that crow was about to die. He was soaking wet. He fell into the ocean. He couldn't go any further. He was drowning. He was about to die. And at that time, a little good intelligence came to him. And he started calling out to those Rajahamsa swans, please, please help me. Please save me. I'm going to die. And then the swans turned around and one of them picked him up and told him, Crow, how was it you were previously praising yourself so loudly? You were saying you could fly in 101 different ways. And now how is it you become so tired and fallen into the water? In this way, that swan chastised the crow. And the crow began to plead with the swan. At that time, the crow spoke the honest truth, or what we sometimes say in colloquial or common English in America. He owned his situation. He bowed his head. And he told that swan that I had been eating the remnants of the family's opulent foods, and because of that, I thought myself better than all the other birds. I became so proud. Now I seek your refuge and shelter. Please save me. And so that Rajahamsa swan picked him up and brought him to the shore and saved his life. So the story is an allegory, and Salya is telling Karna, you're just like that crow, to discourage him. But for us, it's also a very relevant story, because sometimes we become uplifted by receiving the mercy of some great personalities. But we shouldn't forget the color of our feathers. We're kakajans, we're crow-like persons. But someone picked us up and we heard some Krishna Katha. And they told us, now you also speak Krishna Katha. And then we have a Facebook page and we have our own YouTube channel. And so many people, they click like. And eating the remnants of those Paramahamsas, those great personalities, sometimes then we forget the color of our feathers. We forget where we come from. And we lose whatever qualification we have. Thakur Bhaktivinoda has sung about this in one of his songs, a very beautiful song. He says that Garita achare lohi lama moji nakorim sadhu sangha lohi sadhu vesha ani upadeshi eboro mayara ranga. He says, okay, I have to be honest. I have to tell the truth. What is my situation? Garita acha. Right? My behavior is so bad, it's like something you see in one of those scary movies. Right? And nakorino sadhu sangha. I never really did sadhu sangha. I just had some photographs that I paste on Facebook of my Guru Maharaj, myself, and other saintly persons like Narendra Maharaj and that. And say, yes, I'm very close with them. Hmm? That's the only sadhu sangha I've ever done. Like someone who goes to Disneyland and they have a life-size photograph of Michael Jackson, and they stand next to the photograph and they get a picture. They show their friends. Yes, I met Michael Jackson. He and I were good friends. My sadhu sangha is like that. But in spite of that lack of qualification, loy sadhu vesh, here I am, dressed like a sadhu. And ani upadesh, here I am on Facebook, live streaming and giving instructions. He says, Eboro Maya Ranga. This is just Maya's big joke. We should always understand. The Naradiya Purana describes Ahankaro Mahan Yagye Mahasuyo Loba Hetuka. That this pride is a cause of the destruction of all wealth, it's a source of false ego, and it's a source of all types of failure. As long as we try to imitate the great saintly persons and we try to ignore where we come from, we try to ignore the color of our feathers and who we have no qualification. And that's sa-kaita bhakti. And therefore, Sanatana Goswami in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, he describes that this daimyo, this humility, is so important. And this humility, he says, it's in cause and effect with prema. We just mentioned something about that in our last session. Just like a well, you put water in it sometimes to get water out. Because we call it in American English priming the well. You put some water in and it goes down and it falls into the cup. And the cup pushes down so we can get water out. So Sanatana Goswami, he says that we should cultivate humility. Yaya vachayaya dhainyam matya cha staryam eti tat tam yatnena bhajet vidvams tad virudhani varjayat. Someone who's virudhani, someone who's an intelligent person, who's vidvan, who's a learned person, they should cultivate their humility in three ways. This daimya, they should cultivate it with their body, their words, and their mind. And that means that we may not really be humble. In our last session, we spoke about the Tanada piece and itching a verse, and how bhakti is swarat, bhakti is independent. The holy name is independent. The holy name is not dependent on humility. And there are many, many humble people in this world who don't chant the holy names. But rather, it's just the opposite. That when we chant the holy name with sincerity, then that humility comes. Sanatana Goswami goes on to say, Paripakin dainyasya prema jasram vitanyate parasparam. Paraspara means some back and forth. There's a relationship of cause and effect. Parasparam. Tayar ittam karya kana tekshate. That when this dainya fully matures, then it becomes prema. And then when that prema manifests, then humility is there. So the two are circular in one sense. They're in cause and effect. In our last session, we gave some examples that I've seen in the villages of India, how the children, they go and touch the feet of their parents. How the wife gets up in the morning sometimes and she touches the feet of her husband. And doing that, it's not just that they're humbling themselves. And maybe someone may say they don't really feel that way, they're just doing that. But something happens when you do that. You get a hand on your head, which pats you, and you please that person. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada in his purport, one purport in the second chapter of the Gita, he says that superiors should not even be offered a verbal fight. We shouldn't even fight with them in a verbal way. We should always be humble with them. Doesn't mean that someone's a senior devotee and they're speaking some nonsense that we have to follow them or do what they're saying. We have to have some intelligence. And in our last session also we mentioned the phrase durteki dandavat, how in Bengali it's a saying that I offer my obeisances from a distance. I keep some, but I offer respect because a person's a senior devotee. And by offering that respect, I may get some blessing from them. So the mood of the devotee is always, they consider themselves to be the most fallen. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami famously has written, Jagai Made Hoite Muni Se Papishta, Purishera Kita Hoite Muni Se Lagishta. He said, I'm more of a papi, a sinful person, than Jagai and Madai. And Purishera Kita means a worm. Purishera Kita Hoite Muni Se Lagishta. I'm lower than the worms in stool. And he really feels that way. So this stage of honesty is such a very, very important thing. Our line is a line of Raganuga Bhakti. And Srila Prabhupada, in one article in Bhakti Godhead magazine, he said this Raganuga Bhakti is real Bhakti. So we want to cultivate that. But that's such a high thing. And we're so very, very fallen. So how do we cultivate that? We'd like to look today to a few verses from our Goswamis. First of all, I want to examine a verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where Srila Rupa Goswami instructs us about this Dainya Bhav and the importance of it. He says, Kamaha dinam katina katida palita duni deshas tesham jatamoi nakaruna natropa nopashanti utsri jaitanata yadupate sampraptam labda buddhis twamayata sara namabayam namniruksvat madashye. He says, my dear Lord, for so long I've been serving so many masters. Who are those masters? Kama Adi. Masters like lust, etc. Anger, greed, illusion, envy. And Kati Kati Da. Palita Duni Desha. Palita means to obey. Duni Desha means undesirable orders. I've served them. Kati Kati Da in so many, many different ways. I've repeatedly served this lust and anger and greed and illusion. But na karuna, they've never given me any mercy. I just, whatever you want, my dear mind, my dear lusty desires, I give you right away. I'm your humble servant. But then you're never satisfied. He says, natropa no pashanti. I'm so bad. Natropa, tropa means shame. I have no shame. Nor upashanti do I have any desire to even stop them. I've never given them all up, but now, some praptam, I've gotten something, love the booty. I have, my intelligence is starting to wake up. And saranam abhayam nirukshat madashe. I'm taking shelter of you in your personal service. And I'm praying to you, please save me. A few days ago on Radhastami, we began by discussing a verse which is one of my favorite prayers, Srimati Radharani. I got this from the wall of a temple, and I've tried for years since then to find out who is the author of this prayer, and I've not been able to find. I suspect, because it's such a nice prayer, and that no one, I've asked big pundits and scholars about this, no one has heard of it before. I suspect it was written by some fairly contemporary Vaishnava. I don't care. It's a good verse. It's a prayer to Radharani. Pashantyaham aho nityam paraparada dharmakat shamashramam hare radha dehi me sadhu dharmakam. He says, this is me. I own it. I claim this. I am a Pashandi. Pashantyaham. What is a Pashandi? Pashandi means an atheist. It means someone who's a blasphemer. And the word Pashandi has several meanings. It means a hypocrite. It means someone who's an imposter, who's pretending to be something they're not. Pashantyaham, that's me. How often are you a Pashandi? Aho nityam. I'm always a Pashandi. And not only that, paraparada dharmaka, my nature, my intrinsic quality of myself is just to offend everybody else all the time. I own it. Fueled by this mood, by this confession, I'm coming before Srimati Radharani. Kshama Shamam Hare Radha. Oh Radharani, please be kshamasha, please be kind to me. And Dehi me sadhu dharmakam. Please make me into a genuine saintly person. This is very similar to another one of our favorite verses, which is written by Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. It's text 127 to 131 of his viṣāda-yoga stotra. You may have to go through the bedroom. This viṣāda-yoga stotra is a series of prayers we mentioned a few days ago, I think also. We quoted a different verse from it. A very wonderful set of prayers where Raghunath Das Goswami is written for the pleasure of Vishaka. Now, who is Vishaka in Gour Leela? That's Ramananda Roy, who Raghunath Das Goswami had very intimate association with in the Gambhira. And so in these texts, he's given us a theme song. Everybody needs a theme song. Every football team, every baseball team has a particular theme song. Every country in the world has a theme song. And in our Hare Krishna movement, we also have our theme song. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. That's our theme song. Or some say, Tanada Pisa Nichina Taroreva Sahisnana Manina Manadena, Kirtaniya Siddhahari. This is also our theme song. So Raghunath Das Goswami has given us a very wonderful theme song for those of us who are very, very fallen, to show us there is some hope. We may be in the most piteous fallen condition, but there's some hope for us that we can try to approach the topmost thing. What is that topmost thing? Service, personal service to Srimati Radharani. Listen to what he says. Ichetannamalilata padai piyusha varshakai tadrasasvadan hishnata vasana vasatantarai. He says there's a certain group of people who are rasasvada. They're very, very rasik persons. And they're nishnatnata. They're very, very expert in tasting the names and the pastimes of Srimati Radharani. They're drinking that in. Tadrasasvada, nishnata. They're very, very expert in that. And these glorifications of Srimati Radharani, giyamanam janai danyai. These persons are danya. They're very, very fortunate persons who are relishing these prayers of Srimati Radharani. And how are they doing it? This is in line with these 11th and 12th verses we've been speaking from on this 29th chapter of the Bhagavatam. Sneha viklina manasai. With great love, their hearts and minds, manasai, is melting when they hear these pastimes of Srimati Radharani. This is madguna shruti matrena mai sarva guhasaye, as Lord Kapiladeva is expressing here. The mind and the heart become so attracted to Krishna. And so similarly, these devotees, Raghunath Das Goswami says, they become so attracted to hearing the pastimes and the names of Srimati Radharani. Natvatam, I bow down, kripaya vishtam, to Srimati Radharani, who's full of mercy. To those devotees who are kripaya vishtam, who are full of that mercy. And what am I? Raghunath Das Goswami, who's Tulsi Manjari in Krishna Leela, he teaches us this prayer is both for Loka Siksha, to teach us how we should approach the Lord, how we should pray to Srimati Radharani. It's Loka Siksha. And it's also his Dainya Bhav, his genuine, sincere expression, his feelings. He's not just trying to be humble externally, but he really feels this. And he says, who am I? Dushtopi, Nushtara, Sata. I'm a dushta. I'm a very, very wicked person. I'm Nushtara. Nushtara means something very coarse and very hard, very crude kind of person. And not only that, I'm a Shata. I'm a criminal. Jano yam yachate duki. This person owning these things, claiming these things. As we were just reading, Pashanjahamaho Nityam. I am a Pashandi, Dushtapi Nistarasata. I'm a dushta, I'm a very wicked person. I'm nishchara, very coarse and hard. Sata, I'm a criminal. Yachate duki, I'm a very, very unhappy person. Rudan uchari dam muhu. Rudan means to cry. Rudan uchari dam muhu. And muhu means again and again. I'm crying and crying like this. It's not just from the lips. And my Gour Maharaja used to sometimes say that Krishna likes confessions. And this is what Jiva Goswami means by akaitava bhakti, or akaitava bhajan. When we're honest, we own our bad qualities. Haridas Thakur, he never considered himself to be a great personality. In Harinam Chintamani, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes the prayer of Haridas Thakur. What is it he said? Amita Adama Tumi Adama Tarana Ubaye Sambande Patita Pavana. Amita Adama, that's who I am. I'm fallen. He's not saying, don't you know who I am? I'm Lord Brahma. And here in Jagannath Puri, I established the deities of Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra. You better get out of my way. Let me inside the temple. And don't you know, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and I, we're like this. We're very, very tight. He calls me the Namacharya. Actually, he takes instructions from me in the holy name. Did you know that? He doesn't go around like that. Rather, he says, Amita Adama. I'm fallen. That's what I am. Amita Adama. And I know who you are, my dear Lord. Tumi Adama Tarana. You're the deliverer of the fallen. Ubaye Sambandha. This is our connection. Ubaye Sambandha Patita Pavana. O Patita Pavan. This is our connection. When I own it, when I confess to this thing, and it doesn't mean that you run around in public telling about everybody about every sinful, fallen, disgusting thing that you've done, but we reveal our mind to senior persons who we have respect for, that we really feel are very, very advanced Vaishnavas. And to them, we make these kind of confessions. Rudan uchari dambahu. And again, we're crying and crying. He says, Tat padambo jayugmaika gati kataratam gata. Yugmaika gati. He said, this, your lotus feet, padam boja yugmaika gati. They're the gati, they're the goal of my life. Eka gati. It's the only goal I have. But kataratam gata, this is causing me so much distress because I see all these very, very elevated persons who he speaks about in the first part of the verse, Itchetan namalilakta padyai piyusha varshika, who are rasaswada nishnata, who are very expert in relishing all the names and pastimes of Srimati Radharani. I have this greed. I want to associate, but kataram gata, I'm feeling very, very distressed because I don't have this qualification. Therefore, kritva nija ganashyanta, karunya nija sevana, niyuja yati mam sakshat sayam brindavaneshri. He said, I can't help it. This is just coming out of my heart. I can't stop it. I've got to say it. Kritva nija ganashyanta, you please be merciful to me. Your karunya, you show me that mercy. And nija sevane, you give me your own personal service. Nijayatu, you engage me in that. Mam sakshat, that direct service. Sayam Vrindavaneshri, O Queen of Vrindavan. So this is our only qualification, our disqualification. And therefore, as we quoted a few days ago, another one of our favorite verses, Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu prays, Matuyo nasti papatna naparadi chakaschana parihare pilajjane kim bhuvi purushottama. Upa and Sanatana Goswami also quoted this verse in Madhya Lila chapter 1 when they met with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Ramakeli. They said, there's no one, Matuyo nasti papatna, as sinful as us. Naparadi chakashna. No one's as such an offender like us. Pariha, we spoke about our sinful activities. we would just die. But Puriharipi Lajam, we don't even have any shame. O Purushottama, what to speak of giving it up. So there is some hope for us. Krishna Sarva Guhasaye. He's the heart of everyone's heart. And everyone has some connection with Krishna. If it were only the very elevated persons, or only the Brijbasis, only the residents of Vrindavan who could approach Krishna, who had any hope to approach Krishna, then I'm sorry to say that Krishna wouldn't be God. We'd have to nominate someone else. But because he's Sarva Guhasaye, he's that personality who's the heart of all hearts, everyone can approach him. But to approach him, just like in any relationship, if a boy goes to a girl, and the boy is very poor and uneducated, and he has no money and no job, but he wants to impress the girl, and he tells her, you know, I come from a very good family, and he starts lying. I have a very high job, I have so much money, and I have a big education, this and this. And he lies like that. That girl might have some affection for him if he tells the truth. But as soon as she finds out that he's lying, then immediately that's a great offense in a relationship. And this is in a mundane relationship, and what to speak of in our transcendental relationship. And therefore, Haridas Thakur says, Amita Adama, I'm falling. To me, Adama Tarana, you that live with falling. Ubaye Sambandha. This is my Sambandha. This is my connection I have. I have a connection with the Lord because he's Sarva Guhasaye. He's connected with everyone. But my connection is, my only qualification is my disqualification. I need to own it. And that's Niskapata Bhajan. That's honest bhajan. And that's the only hope that we have. And although our 6 Goswamis are gopis at Vrindavan, they're Sakhi Manjaris, and they're relishing the highest ecstasies of love of God and service of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Srimati Radharani, they're speaking in this way. These are the words of Raghunath Das Goswami, the words of Sanatana Goswami, the words of Rupa Goswami. And they give us these words to teach us. They open up their hearts. They're not just teaching us something theoretical. Yes, I'm very, very elevated, and you very nasty, scummy people, you can recite this prayer. Their mood's not like that. But they really feel this. But that feeling is a manifestation of their ecstatic love for Radha and Krishna. We don't have like that. But still, we can take shelter of these prayers and understand that Krishna is Sarva Guhasaye. He's the heart of all hearts. So I'm going to stop there. And I'll mention again to the devotees who maybe weren't here in the beginning. Hare Krishna, nice to see you, Lynn. Brajabanita and Subal Shantabhus. Okay. Starting on Wednesday, we're going to change our timing, and we're going to begin our katha at 8 o'clock Indian time. That's 10 minutes earlier, sometimes 15 minutes earlier than what we've been starting with. So if you want to take part in these, tune in 10 minutes earlier. I'd like to ask the devotees now for any reflections, comments, or questions. And Lynn has a comment here. May I ask, if we're taking these teachings regarding humility to heart, how do we avoid falling into the trap of martyrdom? Thank you, Prabhu. What a beautiful comment. Right? Martyrdom. There's a song. To be a martyr means to feel sorry for myself. Just like, I'm sorry, I don't want to get into politics, but Mr. Trump sometimes he says, nobody likes me, everybody's against me. So that's being like a martyr. Saying, oh, I'm so fallen, this and this. There was a song that I grew up with, a mundane song, I'm sorry, but one of the lines went, it's speaking about a party, people were dancing and playing music, and one of the lines goes, the greatest of the sadists and the masochists too, screaming, please hit me and I'll hit you. So there's a certain types of persons, and for those of you who don't know these words, sadists and masochists, a sadist is someone who's gets pleasure from making other people suffer. And they're sadistic, they're a sadist. And a masochist is someone who gets pleasure from suffering. So they have this relationship, and they're telling each other, please hit me and I'll hit you. Like the sadists and the masochists. So there's this kind of martyrdom, and sometimes we get some pleasure by feeling sorry for ourselves. And we can't get over the bad things that have been done to us. We wear it on our shirt. And I've been abused by so many leaders and so many people, and I've been wrong. And we identify with that. And that kind of self-pity is a great obstacle to bhakti. The devotees, their humility doesn't mean self-pity and martyrdom, where they're trying to advertise that so many people have done things wrong to me, and therefore you should like me and feel sorry for me. We're not trying to get people to feel sorry for ourselves. Rather, it's a sincere expression. And for the devotees even, oftentimes they may hide their humility. Srila Prabhupada had great humility, but he would chastise the devotees sometimes. And he appeared to be just the opposite of humble. He appeared to be such a proud person, that he was chastising people, that he was speaking in a very angry, heavy way. A few days ago, Sachitanoi Prabhu told us a nice story that he heard about Srila Prabhupada in this regard, how on one occasion, Prabhupada was giving a lecture in India, and one person, outside person, approached him afterwards and began complaining. He said, what is this? These Westerners coming here, and what kind of program is this? And this is all nonsense, and was complaining in so many different ways. And the devotees are watching, and they're thinking, Prabhupada is so heavy, he's going to smash this guy. But what did Srila Prabhupada do? He bowed his head and said, I'm sorry, please forgive me. And then later the devotees asked Srila Prabhupada about it, and Prabhupada told him, I think maybe I offended him in my previous life. So Prabhupada didn't try to defend himself, but rather he accepted that chastisement. And that doesn't mean that we should be masochistic, and meaning we should just accept with great pleasure the chastisement of others, although it's a big discussion. There are verses also describing how we should accept the chastisement of devotees. But when that chastisement of the devotees is suggested, that doesn't just mean anybody and everybody. Because I've found, especially on Facebook, there's no limit of the people who want to chastise me. Some people, I've never even met them before. They're just a brand new devotee. They've been chanting Hare Krishna for a couple of weeks or something, and they want to chastise me for so many things, and they don't even know me. There's no limit to the number of people in this world who want to chastise me. But I reserve the right to take chastisement from someone that I accept as an elevated person, from someone that I accept, that I really feel in my heart has some well-wishing, is my well-wisher, cares about me. So Lynn, I hope that's some help. You always have very nice questions and comments. Thank you very much. We missed you on Friday. Nice to see you here. I was going to write to you to see how you were doing. I was worried you might be sick or something. I know you're busy. Sometimes we can't make it. So I want to ask the devotees here in the room now also if they'd like to share with us some reflection from today's discussion, and what is it you're walking away with from this discussion today? Anybody would like to say anything? Sachitanoi Prabhu, why don't you come up here? I'm going to turn the camera so we can see just for a moment. Okay. Just for a moment. The smiling face of Sachitanoi Prabhu. Sachitanoi Prabhu is my senior godbrother, very, very wonderful Lord. So why don't you just speak right into the thing here?
So, Prabhu, thank you. When you were giving the example of the crow and being very proud and arrogant, in the example of the royal swan, finally he was caught up with his fake, arrogance. And then, so the thought came into my mind that, let's say that sometimes, devotees in the pursuit of doing preaching or reaching people and going different places, they depart from the established authority establishment, like let's say the GBC, and then they decide to go in their own. So that's not accepting authority in one sense. So there's a risk, although they might have the knowledge, they might say, well, the Guru came in my dream and I've been guided, or I have friends who can actually counsel me, but still it's not authority, because you can surround yourself with friends or even spouse who agree, just pat you on the back, oh yeah, you're doing pretty good. But to really smash the ego, sometimes you need some kind of a objective view, like someone who actually do the check and balance. And that's why in the government, you have like the Republicans, Democrats, and it's like a balance. So how can you actually exercise your independence and go and do what you need to do, and at the same time having that access of being check and balance? Can you make it?
Thank you, Prabhuji. You always ask the best questions and comments. So, my humble thought in this regard, which may not be appreciated by all managers in the society, my humble thought is that Srila Prabhupada didn't create an institution. Srila Prabhupada created a society. And there's an important difference. It's not just a business, not just a formal institution, but he created a sangha of devotees. It's very important, as you're intimating correctly, that we should always have a check and balance system. We should always see, am I doing what I'm doing right? We should always have some senior persons around to protect ourselves from going off the deep end. And that comes through the institution. We have temple presidents, we have GBCs, and we get official permission to give class. But I have to confess, I didn't get official permission to give this class today, or any of these classes. But I'm still censored if I start saying some nonsense thing and telling people to take drugs or some crazy thing like that. Then people are going to chastise me for it, the senior devotees, and maybe some of the temples will say, we don't want you to speak. I'm censored by that. So in our society, I would suggest that the institution is just like the training wheels of a bicycle. And we join the temple or institution, it teaches us that we have to follow these rules, and you have to ask permission from the authority, you have to have an authority, you have to have a counselor, you have to do this and this under their guidance. That's good for babies. But after some time, when you're 25 years old, if you still have the training wheels on your bicycle, it looks a little foolish. And similarly, our society is meant for devotees to become independent thinkers. Prabhupada wanted that. But that independence is something we have to earn. We have to earn the trust of the devotees. It's just like a child in the family. The child has training wheels on the bicycle because the parents are worried. If you ride that bicycle, you're going to fall over and you're going to break your arm, you're going to hurt yourself. But at a certain point, the child says, look, Mom, I really don't want these training wheels anymore. And I can ride the bicycle. And when the child shows that he's actually able to do that, then we trust him, and the father takes the training wheels off the bicycle and trusts him to ride the bicycle on his own. So that doesn't mean, by my analogy, that we should give up association, we should ever give up having senior persons to guide us. It doesn't mean that we should act independently of Srila Prabhupada's movement, that we should always work cooperatively with the authorities. But at the same time, once the training wheels come up, we want to be able to, maybe we want to do wheelies on the bicycle. We used to do our exercise sometimes in Puri in one place, and we would see these guys riding on the bicycle, and some guys would climb on the handlebars while the bicycle's moving, and he would do handstands and all kinds of different crazy things. You can't do that. And someone who's learning to ride the bicycle, we tell them, don't do that. Don't imitate that. But that's the perfection of riding the bicycle. If you can do that, and if you can do that, then that's the glory of your teacher. That's the glory of your sangha, that we have someone who could ride the bicycle so nicely. So, as was pointed out recently by one devotee to me, that generally in our society, independence and, facility don't generally come together. We don't usually give facility and independence at the same time. Okay, you can be independent. People gave me independence. My GBC let me be independent. Let me make Krishna Katamrita magazine, and let me go on Facebook and give classes like this. But I have zero facility. And the society doesn't maintain me. Krishna takes care of us. However that happens, I don't know. So these two things, independence and facility, generally don't come together. If you want facility, you can't generally be independent, and that's reasonable. We have to accept that. If you want to be independent, then maybe you have to find your own facility. So I hope that's some good answer to your question. Onkar Prabhu's commented, I really like this point that our only qualifications are disqualification. Sometimes we start doubting ourselves whether what we're doing is right, how to be humble. At the same time, we have faith in what we're doing in bhakti. These two things are intimately wound together. You can't separate the two. This is Ashabandha, our great hope. And my dear God uncle Ramana Sukha Prabhu has made a comment. There are followers of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, not necessarily in ISKCON, who claim that the ultimate goal is to follow in the footsteps of the six Goswamis and enter into Manjari Bhav. They sometimes have a mentality that unless this is your spiritual goal, then you are just a Kanishta devotee. If this is correct, then maybe our fallen condition can take many lifetimes to complete. How do we know if devotees who preach this way are actually humble, since they sometimes project themselves as superior to other devotees who are not interested in the goal of Manjari Bhav? Well, you can tell if a fruit is ripe or if it's rotten by the smell. Similarly, when we come in touch with some people, we can tell by the smell, by the way they're behaving, and they're preaching down to you, they don't have any respect to you, that their bhakti is not fully developed, or it just got rotten in a premature stage. And although they're taking this rotten condition to be fully ripe, and I don't have faith in that. I have faith in my Guru Janas. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said that our Siddha Pranali mantra is Tanada peace and Ichena, our mantra by which we're going to understand what is our Siddha Deha, our position in the spiritual world, by which we'll develop this Manjari Bhav, is Tanada peace and Ichena. In the way that we were speaking of today, not that humility is going to give us bhakti, but when we practice humility and bhakti at the same time, although bhakti will give humility, again, to make that point, but in the beginning, it's priming the well. It helps us. I have faith in this process. And I don't have faith in people who want to criticize and claim that they're very, very great and advertise. I've had the good fortune to meet a few exalted Vaishnavas, both in our society. I have that respect to my spiritual master, and some other Vaishnavas who are outside our society. And one quality which I found in all of them was they would hide their devotion. They wouldn't advertise this kind of thing. But it's the nature of a Kanishta Bhakta who's Kanishta, they're not very fixed. They want to advertise things because they have doubts. They're not really sure what they're doing is the best thing. And to make up for that doubt, they run around advertising themselves to everyone else. That's my humble thought, Ramana Sukha Prabhu. I hope that's some help. Ramana Sukha Prabhu, by the way, we don't know, is a wonderful, wonderful cook. Anybody, you have anything you want to share, Dwell Gauranga? Can you come up here? This is Dwell Gauranga. We're increasing our pod, our group of little fish trying to swim here in Mayapur. And we turn it sideways because the light behind is not good. And he's got some comment.
Oh, well, I was thinking about humility and the qualities of people we want to associate with. Yes, and that also. I've been kind of in one way unfortunate. For the last 2 years, I was very much involved. I mean, before that, I was like maybe for 20 years almost exclusively associating with devotees and kind of cut out of material world. And the last 2 years, I kind of get myself into dealing with a lot of people through coaching. And what I've observed is that these qualities of humility, the qualities of compassion, and whatever we as devotees, what we admire, is just the qualities that any normal human being admire. I mean, the people who are phony, the people who are trying to chastise others, the people who are trying to advertise themselves in any walk of life. I mean, outside of devotion, nobody likes them. I mean, nobody likes this kind of people. So it's not exclusive for Vaishnava. The only thing exclusive for us is that our goal is Krishna. But this, as Prabhupada said, there's one in front of the zero. In front of zeros become very valuable. So I've seen amazing people out there who are much more humble than me, who are much, the examples which make me think that that actually this is a universal principle. Universal principle. Nobody likes proud people. Nobody likes people who chastise them all the time. Nobody likes arrogant people. Nobody likes proud people. It doesn't matter if they are successful materially or spiritually. It means, of course, they cannot be successful spiritually if they manifest this quality, as Maharaja very, aptly noticed. So yeah, that's my thoughts. So it's just we see the world around which just functions in these principles. So they may be not doing Kirtaniya Sadahari, but that's our difference. Hare Krishna.
I wanted to make a little comment on it. Sometimes devotees, they think they lose inspiration in the association of devotees in the society, or even in the practice of bhakti, because they say, I've seen so many proud devotees, and they're not really humble. And they may have a similar experience that you have. You're just being honest. That I've seen a lot of people who are more humble than me. I've seen a lot of people outside who are more humble than devotees. I've seen a lot of really proud devotees who they eat off the plate of someone like the story of the crow, and they become fat and proud, and they start trying to pretend that they're a Paramahamsa. They're some big, big person. Bhaktivinoda Thakur speaks about two types of shadow devotion, which are relevant in this regard. One is called Pratibimba Bhakti Abhas, and the other is Chaya Bhakti Abhas. Pratibimba means a reflection, and Chaya means a shadow. Which is the two is the best? The Pratibimba looks much better. If you have a tree on the bank of a lake, you can see the reflection of the tree in the water. And you can see the color, you can see the form of the tree. Whereas the shadow, there's no color, there's no form, there's very little variegatedness. The reflection looks better. But of the two, Bhaktivinoda says the shadow is always and necessarily superior to the Pratibimba. Necessarily better. Mm-hmm. The Pratibimba, the reflection, he says, is like the Mayavadis, or maybe Buddhists, or the non-devotees, who look more humble than the devotees sometimes. And it looks really better. But what is the difference between the reflection and the shadow? The shadow is connected to the tree. And so real humility means we may not be very humble, but if we have one quality of humility, that I want to chant the holy names. If I have one quality of humility, I want to associate with the devotees. I want to continue associating with Prabhupada's society, Prabhupada's mission. That's real humility, and that connection makes us better than the other persons. Although I really appreciate your comment, everybody in the material world, even nobody likes someone who's proud, and everybody likes someone who's humble. They're natural qualities. But we shouldn't become confused. I'm just adding to your comment, we shouldn't become confused, as I see sometimes devotees do, and think that these non-devotees are better. I've seen devotees go to some kind of counseling program or psychiatry program and think, oh, these people are so much more humble than the devotees, are so much, and maybe they are. Just like the reflection looks better in the water than it does in the shadow. But the shadow is always and necessarily better than the reflection. Anything? You want to show your lotus-like face? This is Krishna Kum. She's going to agree to show her face. It's a very rare thing. Speak loudly. Okay. You got to really speak loudly because they can read your lips a little bit. It helps.
Towards the end of your class, you were speaking about self-pity and how detrimental that is and how it's not the same as humility.
Right.
And it reminded me of karma.
Yes,
and how
that's an example we give.
Anyway, maybe you can just share that.
So sometimes we speak about the self-pity, how it's not the same as humility, and we give the example of karma. And how karma, was qualified in so many ways. He knew Shastra. He was the oldest of the Pandavas. He was very, very expert in fighting. He was trained personally by Parshuram. He was a very humble in some ways person. He was very charitable and giving and things, and he showed the qualities of good friendship to Duryodhana. But what is the difference between Karna and Arjuna? Karna had this self-pity. And even though Krishna personally came to him before the Battle of Kurukshetra and said, look, actually you're one of the Pandavas, and Yudhishthira is your younger brother, and you can become the king. You can become the emperor, and they'll all serve you. And Kunti's your mother. Although Krishna personally told him, although Kunti also came to him and said, actually you're my son, and we were separated at birth, and you can become, just put all this aside and you'll have everything. And although Duryodhana was such a badmas, such a rascal, and Karna knew that, but still he was attached to this mundane friendship, and he was attached to feeling sorry for himself. I've been wrong, my life has been so difficult, my mother gave me up when I was a baby, and he couldn't get over that self-pity. So that self-pity is a great obstacle in bhakti. So I want to stop there, and we'll come back again on Wednesday, but we're going to be here 10 minutes earlier on that day. And I want to thank everybody very much for taking part. We have these classes every Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday. And if you want to be reminded, I think there's something you can do to subscribe or something on our Facebook page. You can do like that. So thank you all very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vanchakalpadurubhischa, Kripa Sindhu Bhaiva cha, Patitanam Pada.